Good day. John White from successinbusinessandlife.org. I'm going to talk about office politics today. Most people find this topic extremely threatening, shall we say. It's just the way the world works. Alexander the Great was famous for his hierarchy. General at the top, Alexander's at the top. 3 other generals are under him. Each one of them had an army under them with generals and colonels and whatever, all the way down. That's the hierarchy. That's the way hierarchy works. When Alexander the Great died, there was a war between the 3 generals to divide up his territory, and they ruined the whole thing. Office politics can be damaging, or it can be very helpful to you. If you learn what's in this book, Office Politics, what they will never tell you, and I tell you, but they won't tell you. You'll understand what office politics is, but let me give you my definition right out of the book. I made this up, okay? It's in the preface. Office politics, characterized by shrewdness in managing, contriving, or dealing. Oh yeah. Shrewdly, tactfully, and wisely promoting a policy. Keen and farsighted with penetrating vision and judgment of the weakness and strength of friend or enemy. Cut that, friend or enemy. Manipulating, expedient, practical, deceitfully charming, and treacherous. Ardent, wily, cunning, deceptive, and Machiavellian. All right, let's flip to the first chapter. First chapter is called Why Office Politics. Most people think they can work around it or not have to deal with it, but it's everywhere. It started in Alexander's army. When he died, the 3 generals under him fought for the whole, tried to take over the whole thing, and they ruined everything. So office politics can be damaging to you or it can be helpful to you, depending on whether you understand it or not. It's a very simple thing. It happens in every organization, even the Rotary Club, even the PTA. People are always jockeying for positions and gossiping and backstabbing, manipulating, all sorts of nonsense all the time instead of just trying to get the job done. That's everywhere and it affects every company. Nobody can avoid it. No company's found a way to prevent it. And this quote opens the book. It's from the Buddha, one of the wise people on the planet of all time. Believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who said it, no matter if I said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. Now that's a wise guy to tell you that. I'm telling you the same thing. Whatever I tell you on this, in this video or at my website or in my workshops, if it doesn't jive with your common sense and your reason, throw it away. You don't need to believe everything I say. Take what you want and leave the rest. That's what we tell people in therapy. Read a book, you take the good parts and shit can the rest. So I'm telling you the same thing. You read this book and all the other books I recommend, take what works for you and leave the rest. Why office politics? Office politics is necessary and normal because that's the way the world works. It isn't like our parents told us, or preachers, or professors, or politicians. I call them the 4 Ps: parents, preachers, professors, and politicians. Those are the people that gave you the values and beliefs you have right now. On my website, successinbusinessandlife.org, I tell you lots of things that aren't going to agree with what your parents told you, aren't going to agree with what your preachers told you, aren't going to agree with what your professors or high school teachers or even grade school teachers told you. And of course, the politicians. Most of you don't believe the politicians, but some of you do. The politicians are all a bunch of crooks. I've never met a good politician in my life, ever. They're all out on the make about something, and they're all trying to do for themselves. They're really not trying to help the people. That's all nonsense. Three of the 4 Ps socialized you, taught you, molded you. They even brainwashed you about many things. The 4th P, politicians and office politicians, use what your parents, preachers, and professors taught you. They use it to manipulate you. Okay, they use it to manipulate you. That's why this book is so important. This book prevents manipulation. Office politicians are very good at manipulating you. But although your parents were well-intentioned, they didn't know how the world really works. They believed what their parents told them. They did the best they could with what they knew at the time. And what they knew at the time was be a good Boy Scout, brush your teeth, comb your hair, be honest, and obey the rules and tell the truth in your resume. Okay, I did that. Let me take a little side trip here on my first resume. When I got out of the Army in 1965, I got a job at Hughes Aircraft in Fullerton. We built ground radars. And my job was a very low-level job at the bottom of the food chain, absolutely the bottom. I got $80 a week, and my job was to list the parts on the drawing on 80-column IBM sheets. I had to write the part number, the name, who made it, what the federal stock number was, a brief description, and Hughes part number. One letter in each one of those squares. That's my job with a pencil. Okay. It's about this long, 30 columns. A typical airplane or tank has about, I don't know, 500,000 million parts in it. Every screw, every bolt, every nut, every kind of paint that's used on, everything is listed on the drawing for that assembly. And assemblies, they put the assemblies together and they make the tank. There's a motor, a transmission, a cannon, a loader, levers. There's just millions of parts in the damn thing. And I have to write everything about every part from every drawing I'm assigned. And those given to a girl and key punches them. Now that sounds, probably don't even know what a key punch is, but it's a poor woman sits at a keyboard and she types what I've written in the cards, and in the 80 columns of a little IBM card, remember, it used to say, don't spindle or staple or mutilate. And she punches holes in there that correspond with what she sees on the paper. It's put in the computer, and the computer looks through there and it sorts all the parts, gets all the same screws, all the same nuts, all the same everything that's in that, let's say, the radar system. Then the Army decides which parts they want to buy. And the things that burn out a lot, light bulbs, fuses, hinges, stuff like that that wears out and breaks, they order. But they don't buy the cabinet it's in and so on and so forth. But it was really a horrible job. And I was gutting it out, and it was better than being in the Army. And it was better than trimming Christmas trees, working on a strip mine, oiling heavy equipment. I worked as an undertaker's assistant and a bomber's assistant for a summer. Oh, God. And I was a bartender in college. I didn't want any of those jobs back, so I was happy to have this job. It was inside. I sat at a desk, and it was better than any job I'd had, and I didn't like it. I hated it. It was boring as could be. Mind-numbing would be even better. But I was going to stay there no matter what. So 2 months into the job, this guy calls me in his office, the man who hired me. His name was Marty Kish. He was about 35, and I was 25. So he was 10 years older than me, and he'd been in aerospace all his life. He was the manager of some of us parts listers out on the floor. And he said, close the door. I've never been in anybody's office before in my life. So I closed the door and I sit down. He says, this is off the record. I said, okay. He said, you were hired in 2 pay grades below where you should be because you told the truth in your resume. And I said, what? He said, because you told the truth in your resume, you were hired in 2 pay grades lower than you should have been. And I still had a puzzled look, and he said, personnel, known as human resources nowadays, discounts everybody's resume by 40%. That's why you were hired in where you were. I compared your resume with everything you filled on the application, which they check on all that, where you worked, how much you made, how long you were there, and all that. And everything was exactly the same as your resume. But they don't check your application right away. They look at your resume and they put you in a slot. That's why you are where you are. He said, I'm sorry, that's the way business works. And I must have looked like somebody shot my cat. And he said, okay, John, the next resume, pump it up a little bit. because they're going to discount it. You got to start up here because they're going to push it down to there. I said, okay, boss. And I left. 6 months later, I quit. The same guy told me as I was leaving, I didn't have another job. One of the first mistakes I made in office politics that I don't want you to ever make. Never quit until you have another job. Once you're unemployed, you're an untouchable leper. Ick. People don't hire from the unemployed. They hire from people who have jobs. Okay. I didn't understand that part of it. I just hated this job and it was making me sick. So I quit. When I quit, he asked me, do you have a job? And I said, no. He said, well, you'll find one. You're a smart guy. You're a hard worker. He said, besides, nobody starves in America. I said, okay, thank you. I shook hands and I left. And I couldn't get a job for 3 weeks, 4 weeks even. Now, this was at the height of what we call the bullet business in California. People were hiring everybody. If they could breathe and fog up a mirror, they were hiring them. But because I quit, I'm some kind of branded some sort of a non-human being, and I finally did get a job. And I didn't quit till I had another job. Okay. Only have to screw that up one time. Okay, side trip. Your parents were well-meaning. They just didn't know how the world really works because they believed what their parents told them and what their preachers told them and what their professors told them. And they never tested it out. Like my dad was a dentist. And he had only, before he became a dentist, the only jobs he had was he was a butcher's helper. He worked on the day labor as on the streetcar tracks in Pittsburgh. And he was a short order cook. And he drove a cab. And he was supporting his dad, his mom, and his sister doing that while he put himself through Pitt Dental School. Pitt's private, costs a lot of money. But anyway, he didn't know anything about office politics. He didn't quite understand how the world works either. He got through dental school. He got out. But what he learned by doing all those jobs was when he was a cab driver, he asked the bankers and the businessmen who were dressed nice why they dressed this way or that way, because he knew someday he's going to have to look like them. And they would explain the shirts and ties and the suits and what the fabric was, et cetera, et cetera. But that's coming later on how you dress for success. The point is, your parents weren't trying to mislead you. They weren't trying to sell you anything that they didn't believe. Be a good Boy Scout, tell the truth, and tell the truth on your resume. Okay. Office politics, you learn quickly to not do that. All right, let's see. Your parents were well-meaning. Let's see what's on this page. But they were well-meaning, but they did things to control you. Why? Because they have work to do. They have places to go and people to see and things to do. So first thing they do to control you is put you in a crib so you can't crawl around and destroy the property in that house. So the things they taught you, don't ask why. You can't change your mind. Once you say something, you have to do it. Tell the truth. Follow the rules without question. Stand, like in grade school, stand in line, don't talk. Older people know more than you. I got that lectured to me 100 times. You can trust the police and the government. Well, I don't think very many people believe that anymore. Do as you are told. That's right. Whatever the scoutmaster says you got to do. Whatever the teacher says you got to do. Whatever the police say you've got to do. And then when I was a teenager, marijuana leads to heroin. You'll go blind if you masturbate. Stand in line and don't talk. Sit still and be quiet. In essence, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so we all get out there in the world, we get out of college, and we go looking for a job, we get a job, we get in a company, and we tell the truth and do all this stuff, and it doesn't get anywhere. We get passed over all the time. The point of all this is think for yourself. Believe what you know is true from experience.